My neighbor filed a 70-page complaint with the health department claiming my chicken curry was chemical warfare because I wouldn't give him a plate 8 months ago when he first asked. What's the most ridiculous way someone reacted to being told no? My neighbor tried to have me arrested for chemical warfare because I wouldn't give him a plate of my chicken curry. I was standing in my apartment building's conference room while a health department official, 2 police officers, and my landlord reviewed my neighbor Greg's formal complaint about my toxic cooking emissions. Greg had compiled a 70-page document with timestamps of every single time I'd cooked dinner in the past 6 months, complete with his symptoms ranging from mild headaches to what he called temporary paralysis of his sense of joy. He'd drawn diagrams showing how the curry particles traveled through the ventilation system directly into his apartment with intent to harm. The health department guy kept rubbing his forehead like he couldn't believe this was his life, while Greg presented his evidence with the intensity of someone prosecuting a war crime. This whole insane situation started 8 months earlier when I made my grandmother's chicken curry recipe for the first time in my new apartment. I was trying to impress this woman I'd been dating by cooking her dinner instead of ordering takeout like always. The recipe took me 4 hours because I had to keep calling my mom to ask questions about whether the onions were brown enough or if the sauce was supposed to be that color. The smell filled the entire hallway, and honestly I was worried people would complain because it was pretty intense with all the spices and aromatics. Instead, Greg knocked on my door while I was mid-cooking and said the smell was driving him crazy in the best way possible. He stood in my doorway practically drooling and asked what I was making because he needed to order from whatever restaurant I'd gotten it from. When I told him I was actually cooking it myself, his eyes went wide like I just revealed I could perform magic. He asked if I had enough to share because he hadn't smelled anything that good since his Indian coworker brought lunch to the office years ago. I felt bad, but I told him sorry. My parents were coming over to meet my girlfriend for the first time, and I'd only made enough for 4 people. Greg's face completely changed like I just slapped him across the face with a raw fish. He asked if I was sure I couldn't spare just a small plate, and I explained again that my parents were literally parking downstairs right now. He mumbled something about neighborly courtesy and stomped back to his apartment, slamming the door so hard my girlfriend asked if everything was okay. The next morning, there was a note under my door saying my cooking had given him a severe migraine and asking me to refrain from using strong spices in the future. I figured he was just being dramatic, so I ignored it and made curry again the next week because my girlfriend had loved it so much. This time, Greg called the landlord claiming I was conducting unauthorized commercial cooking because nobody would use that many spices for personal consumption. When that didn't work, he started documenting every single time I cooked anything, posting in the building's Facebook group about toxic fumes and deliberate harassment through cultural foods. He called the fire department saying he smelled gas when I was cooking, but they showed up and just asked for my recipe. He reported me to the health department for running an illegal restaurant, but the inspector literally asked if I did catering. He started leaving printed articles about spice allergies under my door and would dramatically cough whenever he saw me in the hallway. He even tried to get other neighbors to sign a petition banning what he called aggressive ethnic cooking, but everyone else just wanted to know when I was cooking next so they could enjoy the smell. When Greg finally called the police claiming I was using my cooking as a form of targeted harassment and possibly manufacturing illegal substances with all those suspicious spices, I decided I'd had enough of his ridiculous vendetta. I came to the meeting with my laptop full of evidence, including footage from my Ring doorbell camera. The first video showed Greg standing outside my door for 13 minutes straight on multiple occasions, his face pressed against the gap under my door, deeply inhaling like he was trying to vacuum the smell into his lungs. The second showed him going through my garbage at midnight, pulling out empty spice containers and photographing the labels, then Googling each spice on his phone right there in the hallway. But the best evidence was Greg's own Instagram account from 3 months ago, which my girlfriend had found when she was investigating his weird behavior. He'd posted a photo of himself at an Indian buffet with the caption, "Finally found curry that reminds me of my neighbor's cooking. Been craving it for weeks. Might have to come here every day." The comments showed him asking the restaurant if they knew anyone who cooked privately because he was desperate for home-cooked Indian food that smelled like what his neighbor made. The health department official watched the Ring footage of Greg sniffing under my door for 13 minutes, then looked at the Instagram post about craving my curry, then back at Greg's 70-page complaint about toxic fumes. The 2 police officers were leaning forward to get a better look at the screen. My landlord was covering his mouth with his hand. The official set down the papers very slowly and took a deep breath. The official looked right at Greg and said in the most tired voice I've ever heard, "Mr. Peterson, cooking ethnic food in one's own apartment is completely normal household activity. There are absolutely 0 health risks from curry spices traveling through ventilation systems." He tapped the 70-page document. However, filing false reports to multiple city agencies, that's actually a crime. We're talking potential fines, possibly even jail time for wasting emergency resources. Greg's face went from pale to bright red in about 2 seconds. "But my symptoms are real," he stuttered, his hands shaking as he grabbed for his papers. "I have documentation. I have proof of the headaches, the temporary paralysis of your sense of joy." The official cut him off, reading directly from Greg's own complaint. Then he pulled up Greg's Instagram on my laptop and turned the screen toward him. "This is you, correct? At Mumbai Palace 3 months ago, where you wrote, and I quote, 'Finally found curry that reminds me of my neighbor's cooking. Been craving it for weeks.'" The silence in that conference room was so thick you could have cut it with a butter knife. Greg's mouth opened and closed like a fish, while the 2 cops leaned back in their chairs, trying not to laugh. My landlord, Mr. Chen, cleared his throat. "Greg, I need to remind you that making false complaints that waste city resources is grounds for eviction under Section 7.3 of your lease agreement. You've involved the fire department, health department, and now the police." Greg's eyes went so wide I thought they might pop out of his head. "You can't evict me. This is discrimination. I have rights." "You do have rights," one of the cops said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Speaking of which, any chance you'd share that curry recipe? My partner and I have been curious ever since this call came in. Never smelled anything that good responding to a complaint before." The other cop nodded enthusiastically. "My wife's been trying to perfect her chicken curry for years. She'd love to know what spices you use. I'd be happy to write it down for you guys after we're done here," I said, trying not to smile at Greg's expression. Greg's face twisted like he'd just bitten into a lemon soaked in vinegar. The health official was already packing up his briefcase, shaking his head and muttering something about tax dollars. Suddenly, Greg jumped up from his chair so fast it rolled backward into the wall. This is discrimination against people with sensitive noses. You're all conspiring against me because I have a medical condition. The health official didn't even look up from his briefcase. Mr. Peterson, your own social media proves you actively seek out and enjoy curry. Any claim of sensitivity at this point would constitute lying to a city official, which carries its own penalties. We're done here, the official announced, snapping his briefcase shut. All complaints against this resident are dismissed. Mr. Peterson, you'll be receiving a letter about the consequences of filing false reports. I suggest you familiarize yourself with the penalties. He turned to me. Sorry for wasting your time. Enjoy your cooking. Greg stormed toward the door, his face purple with rage. This isn't over. I'll get a lawyer. You'll all be hearing from my attorney. When we filed out into the hallway, I found at least a dozen neighbors waiting around, pretending to check their mail or study the bulletin board. Mrs. Rodriguez from 4B wasn't even trying to hide her curiosity. So what happened? Did Greg really try to have you arrested for cooking? His own Instagram proved he was lying, I explained, and the hallway erupted in laughter. Oh my god, that's amazing, Tom from down the hall said. Hey, since we're all here, what do you guys think about having a building curry night? I've been dying to try whatever smells so good. That's a great idea, Mrs. E. Rodriguez chimed in. We could do a whole potluck thing. Greg shoved past everyone, practically running to his apartment. He slammed the door so hard that Mrs. Chen's decorative plate fell off the wall and shattered. We could hear him inside, his voice getting louder as he yelled into his phone about needing a lawyer immediately for harassment and conspiracy. The next morning, I found 3 notes under my door, but for once, none of them were from Greg. Mrs. Rodriguez wanted to know if I'd teach a cooking class. There's something oddly fascinating about how Greg kept such detailed records of every cooking session. 70 pages with timestamps seems like an awful lot of work just to prove you hate a smell that you're secretly obsessed with. Tom asked for the recipe, and someone from the 3rd floor, whose name I didn't even know, wrote that Greg's complaints had made everyone in the building curious about what smelled so amazing. My girlfriend was scrolling through Facebook when she started laughing. Oh my god, you have to see this. She showed me Greg's post in the building's Facebook group, a rambling wall of text about how the meeting was a conspiracy between corrupt city officials and racist neighbors. He was threatening to call the mayor's office, the governor, the ACLU, basically anyone who might listen. Mr. Chen had already replied, reminder to all residents, filing false complaints to city agencies can result in eviction under your lease terms. Please resolve disputes through proper channels. Greg's post disappeared within minutes, but my girlfriend had already screenshotted it. Too late, buddy, she said, adding it to our evidence folder. 3 days later, I was making curry again, because screw it, this was my apartment and I'd cook whatever I wanted. Through the thin walls, I could hear Greg on the phone in the hallway. No, you don't understand. He's using ethnic food as a weapon. What do you mean that's not a real legal claim? This is the 4th lawyer who's told me that. The building manager, Jennifer, sent out an email that afternoon about starting monthly cultural potlucks in the community room. Let's celebrate our diverse community through food, it read. The first one was scheduled for next week, and I immediately signed up to bring curry. Within an hour, half the building had signed up to bring something. Greg's response came within minutes, a lengthy complaint about how the potluck was a targeted attack on his well-being. He demanded accommodations for what he called his spice trauma, and threatened to contact disability advocates if the building didn't cancel the event. The Facebook group lit up immediately. Someone posted a string of laughing emojis. Tom wrote, spice trauma? Seriously? But the best response came from Mrs. Rodriguez, who simply posted Greg's Instagram photo from the Indian buffet with the caption, so traumatized he went back for seconds? Greg deleted everything and made his profile private, but the damage was done. The night before the potluck, my girlfriend and I spent hours in the kitchen. We were making curry for 40 people, and she was a trooper, chopping onions while tears streamed down her face. This better be worth it, she laughed, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. Check this out, I said, showing her my phone. The Ring app had sent an alert. Greg had been standing in the hallway for 20 minutes, just standing there, staring at my door. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. That's actually getting creepy, she said. The potluck was held in the community room on Saturday afternoon. I carried in 2 huge pots of curry, while my girlfriend brought the rice and naan we'd picked up. The room was already filling up with amazing smells. Mrs. Rodriguez had made tamales, Tom brought Korean BBQ, and someone had made what looked like an entire Greek feast. Greg showed up 15 minutes late with a sad grocery store vegetable tray, the price sticker still on the plastic container. He set it down at the far end of the table and took a seat as far from my curry station as physically possible, but I kept catching him staring at it. Twice he got up and walked closer, pretending to look at other dishes before turning away at the last second. Then the health department official walked in. Holy shit, my girlfriend whispered. Why is he here? Turns out Mr. Chen had invited him as a thank you for dealing with the ridiculous complaint. The official, whose name was actually Dave, came straight over to try my curry. He took one bite and his eyes lit up. Okay, this is incredible. Have you ever thought about getting a food truck license? I'm serious. I inspect restaurants all day and this is better than most of them. Before Dave could even finish his sentence about the food truck, Greg shot up from his chair like someone had electrocuted him. His face was turning that familiar purple color as he marched toward the center of the room. This is unacceptable, he shouted, his voice cracking. You're all sitting here pretending this is normal while he's using this community space for chemical weapon testing. Those spices are literally assault. The room went dead silent for about 3 seconds. Then Tom from 3C started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, a full belly laugh that set off a chain reaction. Mrs. Rodriguez was wiping tears from her eyes. Even Dave the health inspector was shaking his head with this incredulous smile. Chemical weapons? Dave said, still holding his plate of curry. Greg, this is turmeric and cumin, not mustard gas. Greg's hands were shaking as he pointed at my curry station. You don't understand what it's like having to smell that every week. It's psychological torture. Dude, Tom said between bites of Korean BBQ. You literally stood outside his door sniffing for 13 minutes. We all saw the video. Greg's mouth opened and closed a few times before he grabbed his sad vegetable tray and stormed out. Nobody even looked up from their food. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. It was my mom, and she was using her worried voice. Honey, Mrs. Chen just called me. She said there was some kind of incident with your neighbor, something about chemical weapons. I could hear my dad in the background asking if I'd been arrested. Mom, it's fine. Remember that guy Greg I told you about? The one who wanted my curry that first night you came over? The one who slammed the door? Yeah, him. He's just having a hard time accepting that I won't give him food. My mom was quiet for a moment. This is still going going on? It's been 8 months. I know, but the building's handling it now. Well, Mrs. Chen said he made quite a scene at the potluck. She said everyone was laughing at him? Pretty much, yeah. I heard her relay this to my dad, who said something in Vietnamese that roughly translated to, "What an idiot." Just be careful, Mom said. People who can't handle rejection can be dangerous. 2 days later, I found an official-looking envelope under my door. Building management had sent Greg a formal warning letter, and they'd CC'd me on it. The letter listed specific lease violations, filing false reports, harassing other tenants, creating disturbances. They gave him 30 days to cease all problematic behavior or face eviction proceedings. I'll be honest, seeing it in writing made me feel weird. Like, relieved, but also kind of guilty. This whole thing had started with me just saying no to sharing food, and now a guy might lose his apartment. My girlfriend found me staring at the letter that evening. You're not seriously feeling bad for him, are you? I don't know. Maybe. Babe, he tried to have you arrested him for curry. I know, but he called the fire department, the health department, the police. He made a 70-page document with timestamps. You're right. We should get our own camera, she said suddenly, for the hallway outside, just in case he escalates. The thought that we needed security cameras because of a neighbor made my stomach turn. But she was right. That weekend, we installed a small camera facing our door. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was now documenting Greg the way he'd been documenting me. 3 days later, I found a manila envelope shoved under the door. Inside were about 15 printed articles about something called curry addiction disorder, which, by the way, isn't a real thing. Greg had highlighted passages about how strong cravings for curry could indicate serious nutritional deficiencies or mental health issues. On one article, he'd circled a paragraph 3 times and written, "See, it's a real condition," in the margin. My girlfriend Googled curry addiction disorder and found exactly 3 results, all from the same sketchy wellness blog that also claimed Wi-Fi causes ghosts. Should we keep these? She asked, holding up the papers. Add them to the folder, I said. We now had our own documentation folder that was getting depressingly thick. That's when she found something interesting while doing her detective work online. Oh my god, look at this. She showed me a Yelp review from 8 months before I'd even moved into the building. It was for a cooking class at the community center downtown. The instructor had responded to someone's 1-star review. Greg P. was removed from our Indian cooking fundamentals class for repeatedly demanding that other students share their practice dishes with him and becoming aggressive when told the food was for learning purposes only. He is no longer welcome at our facility. Holy shit, I said. This is a pattern. There's more, she said, scrolling. Look at this Facebook post from 2 years ago. It was from a community group in a different neighborhood. Someone was warning others about a tenant who'd been evicted for harassing neighbors about their cooking. The description matched Greg perfectly. We added everything to our folder. The next Monday, I filed my own formal complaint with building management. Unlike Greg's 70-page manifesto, mine was 15 pages of just straight documentation. The ring videos, the false reports to city agencies, the articles shoved under my door, screenshots of his posts, the cooking class incident. Jennifer from the building management office called me that afternoon. I wanted to thank you for this, she said. Between you and me, we've been looking for documented reasons to deal with Greg for a while. He's filed complaints about 5 other tenants in the past year. 5 others? Mrs. Kim in 2A for aggressive kimchi storage, Tom for weaponized coffee grinding, Sarah in 4F for deliberate bacon terrorism. She's Jewish and doesn't even eat bacon. The list goes on. Jesus. We're scheduling a meeting with him tomorrow. Greg's printing out fake medical articles about curry addiction while leaving a paper trail of his own food harassment history across multiple neighborhoods. That's some next-level lack of self-awareness right there. This documentation gives us what we need to take action. That evening, I was taking out the trash when Greg cornered me by the dumpsters. His eyes were wild, and he was breathing hard like he'd been running. You need to withdraw your complaint, he said, stepping way too close. Right now. I took a step back. Greg, you filed 70 pages of lies about me. You called the cops. That was different. I had real symptoms. You posted on Instagram about craving my curry. His face went red. That was taken out of context. How has been craving it for weeks out of context? He actually stamped his foot like a toddler. A grown man in his 40s stamped his foot in frustration. This isn't fair. You people stick together. You people? You know what I mean. I really don't. You and Chen and Kim and all the others with your ethnic food forcing it on everyone. Greg, I cook in my own apartment. You're the one sniffing under my door. He opened his mouth, closed it, and stormed off muttering about conspiracies. That night, my girlfriend found a new post on Nextdoor. Greg had written this long rambling thing about how our building was conspiring against him for having sensitivity to ethnic spices. He'd included photos from the potluck, including close-ups of my curry that he'd apparently taken before his meltdown. He called it evidence of deliberate exposure to harmful substances. The responses were not kind. Someone wrote, "Sir, this is a Wendy's." Another person said, "Touch grass." My favorite was from an account called Local Grandma 62. "Young man, you need therapy, not lawyers." Within an hour, Greg had deleted the post, but we'd already screenshotted everything. The next day, 3 different neighbors reached out to me with their own Greg stories. Mrs. Kim showed me emails where he'd complained about her kimchi being a biohazard. Tom had saved texts where Greg claimed his coffee grinding at 8 a.m. was acoustic warfare. Sarah, who Greg had accused of bacon terrorism, shared security footage of Greg going through her mail looking for food delivery receipts. We should make a support group, Tom joked, but then we actually did. We created a group chat called Greg Survivors, where we shared evidence and warnings about his latest behavior. 2 days later, the building's lawyer got involved. Apparently, Greg's Nextdoor post calling us all conspirators, conducting deliberate exposure to harmful substances, crossed into defamation territory. They sent him a cease and desist letter requiring him to stop all public comments about the building or its residents. I was starting to feel the weight of it all. Like, I just wanted to cook dinner in peace. And now, there were lawyers involved. I wasn't sleeping well, constantly checking our new camera to see if Greg was lurking outside. Every time I cooked anything, even just pasta, I wondered if he was documenting it. My girlfriend noticed I'd stopped cooking curry altogether. "You can't let him win," she said one evening as we ate takeout for the 3rd night in a row. "I'm not letting him win. I'm just tired. This is exactly what he wants." She was right, but the stress was real. I'd spent over $100 on cameras and printing documents because one grown man couldn't handle being told no about food. It felt insane. The Greg Survivors chat was active though, and weirdly supportive. Mrs. Kim shared her family's kimchi recipe in solidarity. Tom offered to be a witness if anyone needed it. Sarah sent memes about difficult neighbors that actually made me laugh for the first time in days. Jennifer Jennifer called with an update. We've scheduled a professional mediation session. It's Greg's last chance before we proceed with eviction. Can you attend this Thursday at 2 p.m.? Do I have to? It would help. The mediator needs to hear both sides, and honestly, your documentation is our strongest case. I agreed, but I dreaded it. My girlfriend helped me organize everything chronologically. The initial Curry incident, the false reports, the Instagram evidence, the door-sniffing videos, his posts, the cooking class incident, everything. You got this, she said the morning of mediation. Just stay calm and let the evidence speak for itself. I walked into that familiar conference room Thursday afternoon to find Greg already there with a fresh stack of papers. The mediator, a woman named Patricia who looked like she'd seen everything, was reviewing his new evidence. Greg had printed out WebMD articles about spice sensitivity, blog posts about culinary harassment, and something called The Legal Rights of Scent-Sensitive Americans, from a website that also sold crystals to protect against 5G. Patricia looked up at me with tired eyes. Mr. Peterson has been explaining his position for the past 40 minutes. Would you like to present your side? I set down my organized folder. I cooked dinner in my apartment. Greg doesn't like being told he can't have any. That's literally all this is. That's a gross oversimplification, Greg interrupted. Patricia held up her hand. Mr. Peterson, you've had your time. Please continue, she said to me. I pulled out the Ring doorbell footage on my laptop. This is Greg sniffing under my door for 13 minutes. Then the Instagram posts. This is Greg saying he's been craving my curry for weeks. The cooking class review. This is Greg getting kicked out of a cooking class for demanding food from other students. The false reports. This is documentation of Greg calling fire, health, and police departments with false claims. The next door posts. This is Greg calling me and other residents conspirators conducting chemical warfare. Patricia watched everything in silence while Greg's face went through about 15 different shades of red and purple. Patricia set down my folder and turned to Greg with this expression that reminded me of a kindergarten teacher dealing with a kid who just won't stop eating paste. Mr. Peterson, she said slowly, I've been mediating tenant disputes for 15 years. I've seen noise complaints, pet issues, parking fights, you name it. But this? She gestured at both our piles of evidence. This is a first. Greg straightened up in his chair. Finally, someone who understands the uniqueness of my situation. No, Patricia cut him off. What I understand is that you've harassed your neighbor for 8 months because he wouldn't share his dinner. You've wasted thousands of dollars in city resources. You've defamed multiple residents online. And you've done all this while simultaneously craving the very food you claim is toxic. But the symptoms are psychosomatic at best, completely fabricated at worst. She pulled out Greg's Instagram post again. You can't claim curry gives you migraines while posting about how much you want to eat it. That's not how allergies work, Mr. Peterson. Greg's hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. This is discrimination, Patricia sighed. No, it's not. What it is harassment. Clear, documented, repeated harassment. She turned to me. You have every right to cook whatever you want in your apartment. Mr. Peterson has no right to demand your food, document your activities, or file false reports. So what happens now? I asked. I'm going to recommend that Mr. Peterson apologize, cease all complaints immediately, and avoid any contact with you going forward. If he agrees to these terms, perhaps the building management will reconsider eviction proceedings. Greg shot up from his chair so fast it rolled backward and hit the wall. Apologize? To him? He's the one who should apologize for subjecting the entire building to his toxic emissions. Patricia didn't even flinch. Mr. Peterson, this is your opportunity to resolve this situation without losing your apartment. I strongly suggest you take it. I'll sue! Greg shouted, his face that familiar purple color. I'll sue you, him, the building, the city, everyone. My cousin's friend is a lawyer and he says I have a case. Your cousin's friend is wrong, Patricia said flatly. She started writing on her notepad. I'm documenting that Mr. Peterson has refused mediation and declined the opportunity to resolve this matter cooperatively. Greg grabbed his stack of papers, shoving them into a messenger bag with shaking hands. This isn't over! You'll all be hearing from my attorney! This is a conspiracy and I have proof. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the framed certificates on the wall rattled. Patricia and I sat there in silence for a moment. Well, she said, closing her notebook, that went about as well as expected. I'll submit my report to building management today. Based on his refusal to cooperate, I imagine they'll proceed with eviction. I actually feel kind of bad, I admitted. Patricia looked at me over her glasses. Don't. In my report from the cooking class incident, the instructor mentioned Mr. Peterson did the exact same thing there. Demanded food, got rejected, then claimed the spices were making him sick. This is a pattern, not an isolated incident. That evening, I finally cooked curry again. It had been over a week since I'd made anything more adventurous than pasta, and honestly, letting Greg control what I cooked in my own apartment felt like letting him win. My girlfriend came over, and we opened all the windows, not because we were worried about the smell, but because it was a nice night and we wanted the fresh air. How do you feel? She asked, watching me stir the sauce. Relieved, I think, but also just tired. Like, this whole thing is so stupid. At least it's almost over. The curry turned out perfect, probably because I wasn't stressed about it for the first time in weeks. We were halfway through dinner when my phone buzzed. Jennifer from building management had sent an email. Following today's failed mediation and Mr. Peterson's refusal to cooperate, we are proceeding with eviction. Patricia's been doing this for 15 years and never seen anything like Greg's curry case. That makes me wonder just how many weird neighbor fights she's dealt with before this topped them all. How does someone even become a professional mediator? He will receive formal notice tomorrow morning with 60 days to vacate. We appreciate your patience during this difficult situation. My girlfriend read it over my shoulder. 60 days? So we have 2 more months of this? Apparently. We should keep the camera running. She was right. If Greg was getting evicted anyway, who knew how he'd escalate? The thought made my appetite disappear. The next morning, I watched through our peephole as Jennifer and a security guard knocked on Greg's door. I couldn't hear the conversation, but Greg's voice kept getting louder until he was basically screaming about discrimination and lawsuits. Jennifer stayed calm, handed him an envelope, and left while Greg stood in his doorway shouting at their backs. Within an hour, Greg had posted on Facebook, Nextdoor, Twitter, and some website called Tenant Rights Warriors about his persecution. He claimed he was being evicted for having a disability, though he never actually specified what disability that was. He posted photos of the eviction notice with certain parts circled, trying to find loopholes. The responses were not sympathetic. Someone on Nextdoor commented, "Didn't you post last month about loving curry?" Another person shared screenshots of Greg's deleted posts about the building conspiracy. One guy just wrote, "Bro, get help." Greg deleted everything within a few hours, but the damage was done. The The Greg survivors chat was buzzing with screenshots and updates. Tom had caught Greg trying to slip something under his door at 2 a.m. on his camera. Turned out to be a petition to overturn the eviction that Greg had signed himself 5 times with different handwriting. 3 days passed in relative quiet. I kept cooking normal dinners, Greg kept to himself, and I started to think maybe he'd accepted his fate. Then Thursday night happened. I was dead asleep when someone started pounding on my door at 11 p.m. Not knocking, pounding, like they were trying to break it down. My girlfriend and I both jumped out of bed, and I grabbed my phone to call 911 while she checked the camera app. "It's Greg," she whispered. "He looks drunk." Through the door, Greg was sob-yelling. "Please, please, I just need to talk. I need you to understand, please." "Greg, it's 11 at night," I called through the door. "Go home. I can't lose my apartment. You don't understand. This is all I have. Please, just tell them it was a misunderstanding." My girlfriend was already on the phone with building security. Within minutes, we heard footsteps in the hallway, and Greg's sobbing got quieter as security escorted him back to his apartment. The next morning, Jennifer called me personally. "I'm so sorry about last night. We've issued an additional warning to Mr. Peterson about disturbing other residents. If it happens again, we can expedite the eviction." "He seemed drunk," I said. "Security noted that in their report. We're documenting everything." That afternoon, I was getting my mail when Greg appeared beside me. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, red eyes, but he wasn't yelling this time. He was quiet. "I'm sorry," he said, and for the first time in 8 months, he actually sounded sincere. I really wanted that curry. My ex-wife used to make something similar before the divorce. When I smelled yours, it reminded me of better times, and when you said no, I lost it. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt bad for the guy, but the other part remembered the 70 pages of lies, the false reports, the months of harassment. "Greg," I finally said, "you tried to have me arrested. You called me a terrorist. You made my life hell for 8 months because I wouldn't give you food." "I know." His voice was barely a whisper. "I know. I fucked up. I don't handle rejection well." "That's an understatement. Could you maybe tell management it was a misunderstanding, that we've worked it out?" I looked at this man who had made my home feel unsafe, who had cost me money and sleep and peace of mind, who had tried to destroy my reputation because I'd said no to sharing food one time. "I can't do that, Greg. You filed false reports that could have gotten me in serious legal trouble. You harassed multiple neighbors. You need help, but I can't be the one to help you." His face crumpled, but he nodded. Yeah, I figured. He started to walk away, then turned back. The curry really did smell amazing, though. I watched him shuffle back to his apartment, and despite everything, I felt a twinge of sadness. Not enough to help him, but enough to recognize that somewhere under all that entitlement and rage was just a lonely guy who couldn't handle being told no. The next few weeks were quiet. Greg kept to himself. No more complaints or door pounding or mysterious envelopes. The hallway felt different, still tense, but in that way where everyone's waiting for something to end. Other neighbors started being friendlier, like they'd been holding back while Greg was on his rampage. Mrs. Kim brought me kimchi as a solidarity gift. Tom started a coffee club where we'd meet in the community room Sunday mornings. Sarah organized a cookbook exchange. It was like the building was slowly exhaling after holding its breath for months. My girlfriend found one last post from Greg on some obscure tenant rights forum, asking if anyone had successfully sued for culinary harassment. The only response was from a moderator saying the post was being removed for violating community guidelines about frivolous legal threats. Moving day came on a Tuesday. I worked from home that day, partly because I had a deadline, but mostly because I wanted to see him actually leave. Through the peephole, I watched movers carry boxes while Greg supervised, occasionally glaring at my door. Around noon, I was making lunch. Yes, curry, because why not? When I heard Greg in the hallway. "That's the apartment," he told one of the movers. "The guy in there weaponized ethnic food against me, made my life hell with his toxic spices." The mover just grunted, clearly not interested in Greg's drama, but Greg kept going. He could have shared, just one plate, but no, he had to be selfish. And then he got everyone to gang up on me. "Sir, where does this box go?" the mover interrupted. Greg finally left around 3 p.m. I watched from my window as his car pulled away, and the whole building felt lighter somehow. That evening, Jennifer sent an email to all residents confirming that the unit was now vacant, and thanking everyone for their patience during a challenging situation. The monthly potluck that week felt like a celebration, though nobody explicitly said it. Everyone brought their most aromatic dishes: Korean BBQ, Ethiopian injera, Thai curry, Mexican mole. The smells were incredible, and not one person complained. "To cooking whatever the hell we want," Tom raised his beer in a toast. "To cooking whatever the hell we want," we all echoed. 2 months after Greg left, I got a LinkedIn message of all things. It was from a property manager at a complex across town, asking if I'd had any issues with a former neighbor named Greg Peterson. Apparently, he'd listed our building as a reference. I spent an hour writing a professional but thorough response, attaching the key documentation, the false reports, the Instagram posts, the door-sniffing videos. I ended with, "While I cannot recommend Mr. Peterson as a tenant, I do hope he gets the help he needs." The property manager thanked me and mentioned that Greg had already filed 3 complaints in his first week there. One about a neighbor's microwave being too loud, another about aggressive banana bread baking, and a third about someone's lavender candles causing him emotional distress. My girlfriend and I had a good laugh about the banana bread thing, but honestly, I just felt bad for his new neighbors. They had no idea what they were in for. About 6 months after Greg moved out, I was downtown grabbing lunch with a coworker when we decided to try this Indian place everyone had been raving about. We walked in, and the smell hit me immediately. Proper curry, the kind that makes your mouth water before you even see the menu. I was reading the specials board when I heard a chair scrape behind me. There was Greg, sitting alone at a corner table with a menu in his hands. Our eyes met, and his face went from normal color to ghost white in about half a second. He looked at me, then at the curry special written on the board, then back at me. Without saying a word, he stood up, left a 20 on the table even though he hadn't ordered yet, and walked straight out the door. The waiter came over looking confused. "Sir, your friend forgot to order?" "He's not my friend," I said, trying not to laugh, "and I don't think he's coming back." My coworker was staring at me. What the hell was that about? Long story, let's just say he has a complicated relationship with curry. We sat down and ordered, and I couldn't help but notice Greg's 20 still sitting on his abandoned table. The waiter kept looking at it, then at the door, clearly baffled by someone paying for food they never ordered. A week later, building management sent me this fancy thank you card in the mail. Inside was a handwritten note from Jennifer. "Thank you for your patience and thorough documentation during the Peterson situation. investigation. Your evidence was crucial in allowing us to address a long-standing problem, Tenant. Please accept this small token of our appreciation. They'd included a $50 gift card to Mumbai Palace, the same Indian restaurant Greg had posted about on Instagram all those months ago. I had to laugh at the irony. My girlfriend and I used the gift card that weekend. The curry there was actually pretty good, though not as good as my grandmother's recipe. While we were eating, she pulled out her phone and showed me something. "You're not going to believe this," she said, turning the screen toward me. Greg was alone at that Indian restaurant table, and the moment he saw me, his whole face just went white. Makes me wonder how many times he's walked into curry places since moving out, hoping to find what he was looking for all along. It was a post in a tenant rights forum from someone asking for advice. The username was GregP_Justice, and the post was asking if anyone had successfully sued a former neighbor for ongoing psychological damage from curry exposure, even after moving to a different building. The responses were brutal. Someone wrote, "Seek therapy, not legal advice." Another person said, "This has to be a troll post." The moderator had locked the thread with a note about frivolous legal threats. "He's still thinking about your curry 6 months later," my girlfriend said, shaking her head. "That's actually kind of sad. Or creepy," I pointed out. "Probably both." She suddenly got this mischievous look. "We should frame it." "Frame what?" "The best photo of Greg sniffing under your door from the Ring camera, as a reminder of how absolutely insane this whole thing was." I thought she was joking, but she pulled up the video on her phone right there in the restaurant. She screenshot the exact moment where Greg's face was pressed against the gap under my door, his expression one of desperate concentration as he tried to inhale every molecule of curry smell. "This is art," she said, zooming in on his face. "This belongs in a museum of human weirdness. We actually did it. Printed it out at CVS, bought a nice frame, and hung it in my kitchen right above the spice rack. Every time I cook curry now, which is at least twice a week because screw it, I love curry, I see Greg's desperate face and remember that whole ridiculous 8 months. Friends who come over always ask about the photo. 'Is that someone sniffing under a door?' they'll say, confused. And then I get to tell them the whole story, which usually takes the entire dinner to get through because nobody believes it at first. They always want to see the other evidence, the 70-page complaint, the Instagram posts, the video of him going through my garbage. My mom has become oddly proud of the whole thing. She tells everyone how her son's cooking was so good. It drove a man to madness. He called the police, she'll say to her friends, the health department, all because my son wouldn't share his curry. She makes it sound like I'm some kind of curry wizard with powers beyond mortal comprehension. Dad's take is more practical. He thinks I should have charged Greg for the curry from the beginning. Could have made a fortune, he says every time we have dinner. $70 a plate. He would have paid it. The building's monthly potlucks are still going strong. Last month, Mrs. Kim brought her daughter who's studying culinary arts, and she took notes on everyone's recipes. Tom started dating Sarah from 4F after bonding over their shared Greg experiences. The building feels like an actual community now, instead of just a place where people happen to live near each other. Sometimes new tenants ask about the previous resident of Greg's apartment. Jennifer, the building manager, has a standard response. He relocated for personal reasons. But the older residents know. We share knowing looks whenever someone new mentions they love cooking with lots of spices. You'll fit right in, we tell them. This building loves flavorful food. I ran into the health department inspector Dave at the grocery store a few months ago. He recognized me in the international foods aisle and came over laughing. "Still cooking that curry?" he asked. "Twice a week at least." "Good. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." By the way, I told that story at our department holiday party. Nobody believed me until I showed them the 70-page complaint. It's become legend at the office. Apparently, Greg's complaint is now used as a training example for new inspectors on how to identify frivolous complaints. Dave said they call it the Curry Files and use it to teach about wasting city resources. The cooking class instructor from the community center reached out to me on Facebook after someone told her about Greg's eviction. She wanted to share more details about his behavior in her class. Apparently, he tried to claim ownership of communal ingredients, saying that since he was paying for the class, everything in it belonged partially to him. When other students made practice dishes, he'd hover around demanding his share of what they'd made. "I've taught for 15 years, she wrote, and I've never had someone misunderstand the concept of a cooking class so completely. He thought it was a restaurant where he also got to watch the food being made. Her story made me realize Greg's issue went way deeper than just wanting my curry. It was about feeling entitled to anything he wanted, regardless of other people's boundaries. Last week, I got another LinkedIn message, this time from a property manager in a completely different state. Greg had apparently moved again and listed his previous building as a reference. The manager had somehow tracked down my information through the documentation trail. "I'm reaching out because Mr. Peterson has filed 12 complaints in his first month here," she wrote. "They range from aggressive bread baking to weaponized garlic usage. Your documentation from his previous residency would be very helpful." I sent her everything, including the Ring videos, the Instagram posts, and the health department's training materials about frivolous complaints. I also included contact information for Dave and Patricia, the mediator, figuring they could provide professional perspectives on Greg's behavior. She replied the next day, "This is incredibly helpful. We'll be proceeding with eviction immediately. No one should have to deal with this level of harassment over cooking food in their own home. It's weird to think that Greg is out there somewhere, probably sniffing under some new neighbor's door, documenting their cooking times, preparing another 70-page manifesto about toxic spices. Part of me wonders if he'll ever get help, or if he'll just keep moving from building to building, leaving a trail of confused property managers and exasperated neighbors in his wake. My girlfriend thinks he'll eventually run out of places to live. There are only so many apartment buildings in the country," she points out. "Eventually, word will get around." She's probably right. The property management world is smaller than people think, and Greg's becoming infamous in it. The LinkedIn message from across state lines proves that. But honestly, most of the time I don't think about Greg at all. I cook my curry, live my life, enjoy my apartment that actually feels like home now. The photo above my spice rack makes me laugh more than anything else. It's a reminder that sometimes the most ridiculous problems have the simplest solutions. Just say no and stick to it. Though I do sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd just given him a plate of curry that first night. Would he have been satisfied? Would he have become a regular dinner guest? Would we have been friends? Then I remember the 70 pages of timestamps, the false police reports, the claim that I was conducting chemical warfare, and I realized that Greg was never going to be satisfied with just one plate. People like Greg are never satisfied, period. They want what they want, and they'll escalate until they either get it or face consequences. The last time I made curry, my my girlfriend said something that really stuck with me. You know what the craziest part of this whole thing is? Your curry's good, but it's not lose your apartment good. She's right. It's just chicken curry. My grandmother's recipe, sure, with all the love and tradition that comes with that. But at the end of the day, it's just food. The fact that Greg lost his apartment over it, that he's still filing complaints about other people's cooking, that he left a restaurant without ordering just because he saw me, that's not about the curry at all. Sometimes I wonder if Greg ever figured that out. If he ever realized that his problem wasn't with my cooking or my rejection, or even with spices in general. His problem was with the word no itself, with the idea that he couldn't have something just because he wanted it. Time to wrap up this wild ride through the Curry Chronicles. Appreciate you letting me sprinkle some spice on this story feast. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.